Good morning. How are you all?
Good, Mary. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. We do have media on the line, so everybody is live right now, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes, waiting for one more participant, and then we'll get moving along.
We're in your hands.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Davis. We're getting ready to start in just a minute.
All right. You can hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Welcome to the Mountain West Virtual Press Conference. As announced last night, the Mountain West Board of Directors approved the start of the 2020 football season to begin on Saturday, October 24th. The intent is to play an 8-game schedule and host the Mountain West Football Championship game on Saturday, December 19th. The participants on today's call are San Jose State President and Chair of the Mountain West Board of Directors, Dr. Mary Papazian, Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson, Wyoming Athletic Director and College Football Playoff Selection Committee member Tom Berman, Dr. Tony Islas from the University of Nevada, and Jim Davis, Executive Vice President for Quest Laboratories. Today's call will last 30 minutes. We'll begin with an opening statement from Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. Commissioner Thompson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Javen. So as you can imagine, it's been about as wild a 7-month journey to get to where we were last night and today's announcement. And we're very excited as a league. The Mountain West Conference looks forward to playing football this fall. We've got a lot of participants on the call today that can answer any specific questions you might have and have been integral in us being able to make the decision that was made last night. So without further ado, let's open it up to questions, Javen.
Thank you, Craig. To ask a question, please raise your hand on the button on the lower toolbar. That can be done on your computer screen or on your phone. If you are selected to ask a question, please unmute your microphone and limit your question to 1 and 1 follow-up so that everyone has the opportunity to ask questions today. You will not appear on the screen. Only the participants who you ask the question to will appear on the screen. We will mute your phone after the second question, and you may ask another question and be added to the queue if time permits. Since we have several speakers today, please make sure you direct your questions to the appropriate person. Please prompt for questions. I don't. Our first question is going to come from Chris Vanini with The Athletic. Chris, go ahead.
Craig, do you expect all 12 teams to participate this fall?
I do at this point, Chris. That's a great question. You know, we have some restrictions, certainly in some of our states right now, and we talked that through a little bit, and we're working through those with state and local and county in between governance restrictions. But it might be a little premature, but at this point, everybody is making every attempt and effort to get those variances and clearances.
And I know some teams either haven't started yet or are maybe a week or two into the 12-hour stuff. Considering we're 4 weeks away from games and the NCAA had those recommended timelines to come back, how do you feel about the availability of everybody on October 24th?
Well, that was one of the questions, and Dr. Islas can maybe answer it better, but from our medical group, and we really focused on that, is 29 days enough? That would be a normal fall practice schedule anyway, Chris. And so, today is the 25th, and if we play on the 24th, and the 29 window is perfect, it's tight. But, there are restrictions on days off and what you can do, and the acclimation period of being able to wear particular helmets and spiders, et cetera, for a few days before you get into contact drills. But you touched on a key point. A number of our institutions, maybe with the exception of one, have minimally been in the 12-hour window for a period of time now.
Thanks.
Yep.
Our next question will come from Michael Katz from WyomingSports.com.
Hi, Craig. This one is for you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Obviously it's been a crazy week or so with the Big Ten kind of getting the ball rolling. I'm just kind of curious, in terms of the Mountain West acting, why, the proper government entities to get clearance and things of that nature maybe weren't done a little bit sooner, and why rapid testing, that push, didn't really kind of get going until the Big Ten made its move.
Well, we didn't base anything on the Big Ten or any other conference, certainly, Mike. But, our situation was unique. We had 3 schools in the state of California, the state of Hawaii, the state of New Mexico that have different protocols and restrictions. And we're working through those right now and don't have 100% clearances in all areas, but we're working towards those. So I think it's something that it didn't just happen in the last week or based on anybody else's decision, but more that we've been working on this for months now and trying to figure out a way. That the biggest key in all this has been our relationship with Quest Diagnostics and getting the 3 rapid testing antigen tests for each campus. And without that, we wouldn't even be here today.
And then just a quick follow-up. A lot has been made of the cost of testing. Do you have any specifics on what a single test will cost and how much it's looking like it could cost for these programs?
Yeah, in part, we certainly have an idea. It'll be well into the millions of dollars, but it depends perhaps on the bubble size, the inner bubble, if you will. Let's presume 100 players and 10 coaches and trainers. How many people are in that bubble that will be tested 3 times a week? And that varies institution by institution. We might be able to get to a point that every Mountain West institution has an inner bubble, hypothetically, of 140 people. Some are larger, some are smaller. And so, the cost, there is a fixed cost on the test, but we don't know exactly the number of people that will be tested on each campus.
Our next question will come from Ralph Russo from the AP. Ralph, please make sure you unmute your phone, please.
Hi, Craig. I guess one quick one for you. You had mentioned that you expect all the teams to compete. I understand Air Force had already planned to play, Navy and Army. What's their status? I also know that there's some things with the students there as far as being able to take a semester off. You just address Air Force's status.
Well, they could do a better job specifically, Ralph, but my understanding, I spoke to Troy Calhoun on Wednesday at the change of command and superintendent ceremony, and I think as many as into the high 30s took advantage of the turn back and are off this semester and will not be a part of the football program. But, that's going to be a question that they can answer. Right now, you hit it on the head. They will play Army and Navy scheduled, and they would probably play another 6 Mountain West games, if not 7. They may end up playing 9 games and everybody else 8 games because of Army and Navy. but those will be determined. Nobody has a crystal ball as to what's going to happen on anyone's schedule throughout the rest of October, November.
And if I could just direct one at the doctor about the testing. The antigen testing seems to be a game changer as far as the cost and the speed. But, in the Big Ten and Pac-12, they're doing it daily, and they believe that that's the way that they'll sort of contain things and not get caught up in a lot of contact tracing people into quarantine. Why do you think 3 days a week, where you've seen some disruptions in these other conferences, will be manageable for the Mountain West with the antigen testing?
It's a really good question, and I hope you can hear me well.
I hear you fine. Thank you.
It's a really good question to talk about antigen testing and why only 3 times a week when other people are doing it 6, 7. When you look at the sensitivity and specificity for antigen testing, doing it multiple times during the week actually increases your chances of actually getting rid of that sort of decrease in sensitivity specificity. The good news with us, though, is that we're using a antigen test that is actually new to the market through Quest Labs that is actually really sensitive and really specific. It is just tiny fraction less than a PCR test. And so by us doing it multiple times a week, we're kind of hedging our bets in our favor that we'll catch a positive. And we're confident that because the test is actually a very sensitive and very specific test, that actually will probably be able to kind of factor out those false negatives and false positives as well.
Ralph, one follow-up, if you can hear me, is we have the 3 antigen tests, but if anyone does test positive, we'll follow that up with a PCR.
Our next question will come from Kelly Lyle from the Fort Collins, Coloradoan.
Craig, as you set these things up, obviously there's the testing and all. What are the various requirements going to be for a team to be able to play a game versus at what point you say it's just not safe for this team to play this week based on testing, quarantining, whatever else, number of players at positions?
Well, as we speak, Kelly, the 9 leagues that are scheduled to play or have started to play have variances on that. Some have minimums of 53 players, a specific number. Some have specific per position, and we have to determine that with our athletic directors.
So that none of that has been determined yet. That's all to come.
To come, correct.
Okay.
Our next question will come from Adam Rittenberg from ESPN.
Hey, Craig, similar to Ralph's question, I'm just wondering kind of the journey to this testing place for you guys, and what else did you consider? Was a daily antigen option on the table, or how did you guys get to this place with your testing?
Well, we've been PCR testing for several months, Adam, and I think Dr. Isla said it best. Certainly, the 3 antigen with the quality of the test that Quest is providing is going to be sufficient for us. The range is as close to a daily PCR. Obviously, daily would be better than 3 times a week, but we're very comfortable. And hats off to our medical advisory group. They've been meeting on a weekly or bi-weekly basis for 4 or 5 months now, and it's something that we talk about on every call. What is a comfortable level for testing, and again, with Quest's support and help and their test specifically, we feel very comfortable that 3 antigen tests with a necessary follow-up PCR is sufficient to get us what we need.
And then just a quick follow-up. Obviously, people know about what's going on in California. What about New Mexico and Hawaii specifically, and some of the issues just locally with those states, with your institutions?
Well, Hawaii has certainly been talking to their governor and local health authorities, and we've exchanged a lot more information just since this decision was made last night with the president at Hawaii. and certainly they still have some steps to go. There have been discussions about the restrictions in Hawaii now, but I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse, but certainly we're optimistic that they will be able to resolve some things and that a team can fly the night before a game, play in Hawaii, and return home safely. New Mexico is in a similar situation. Both states still have quarantines if you visit Hawaii or New Mexico, but working with local authorities on our testing policies, if there are additional requirements or demands from those two states, but working all through those and hopefully a resolution within the next month before October 24th.
The next question will come from Derek Togerson from KNSD in San Diego.
Hey, Craig, the 8-game schedule, have you built in any extra dates in there? Will it be 8 games over, say, a 10-week period? We have seen some other schools have to postpone games. Will there be any time in there to, God forbid, there is need for a postponement, be able to make those games up?
There isn't. We have 8 games in 8 weeks, and I would fully anticipate that not all 12 institutions in the Mountain West will play 8 games for various reasons, just based on what we've seen the first 3 weeks of this season.
And then a question for Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, Mr. Thompson mentioned, or Mr. Isles, I believe, mentioned a different kind of test that's being used. Can you kind of walk us through what that new test is, and maybe if that's going to be something that other leagues and conferences may be able to pick up? And is this kind of a game changer for you?
Well, first, I'm not a doctor, but thank you for for the title. The antigen test is Dr. Tony discussed, has what we call lower limits of detection versus some of the other tests that are out on the market today. And at those lower limits of detection, we can detect the virus earlier, and then we have the same we have a better sensitivity specificity around those lower limits. So that's what gives the medical community in the conference the confidence to do the every other day testing, along with, of course, any positives will be reflexed immediately to the gold standard, which is our PCR testing.
Our next question will come from Chris Murray at Nevada Sportsnet.
For Commissioner Thompson, I'm wondering if the truncated football season will still allow you guys to hit the thresholds required to satisfy the entirety of the media rights deal that you guys signed not too long ago.
Too early to tell, Chris. We'll just have to see. We have enough games scheduled to meet those commitments and obligations. I've spoken several times to Fox and CBS just since last night's announcement and decision. And so, right now we have enough inventory, but we'll see how many of those games are actually played.
Okay. And then just to follow up on the testing costs, will the Mountain West absorb some of those costs, or is that up to each of the individual schools to pay for on their own?
Right now, the Mountain West will absorb 100% of the testing costs.
Our next question will come from Chris Matthews from KLAS TV in Las Vegas.
Hey, Craig, can I just ask you a little bit? The reports that surfaced yesterday about the kind of relaxing all the bowl restrictions in terms of wins and losses and opening the door for more schools to participate, which I guess makes sense. But can you shed some more light on some of those reports that were circulating yesterday in terms of bowl eligibility and if they're being relaxed?
Yeah, the Football Oversight Committee made a recommendation to the council. I believe that'll be voted on in mid-October, that there really are no restrictions. You do not have to have a winning record. There is no 500 record, rather. And right now, I just had a conversation with ESPN about the number of bowls they are still going to sponsor. I will say this, the bowl season will be very unique. The Football Oversight also is recommending December 1st through, I think, January 10th, right up to the national championship as the window. As you know, it can be a challenge for the Mountain West. If we play our championship game on the 19th, Saturday the 19th, that is generally the opening day of bowl season, and we usually play in a couple games on opening day. And so all those decisions are going to be to determine how many bowls there will actually be and what the record has to be. You know, there could be teams playing in bowl games this year with less than a 500 record.
And if I can follow up, that championship game, will it be played here in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium?
No, it's going to be at the site of the highest win percentage team.
Our next question will come from BJ Rains. BJ, please unmute your phone line. We'll move on to Kirk Kenny from the San Diego Union Tribune.
Team. Hi, Craig. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit more about the schedule? When will it be out? And will the teams be playing the same 8 they've had on the schedule originally, and will it be all conference, or how will that work out?
A couple questions embedded in there. Right now, Army and Navy and Air Force will be out of conference. There's the potential that a Boise State BYU previously scheduled game could be played. Other than that, it'll be all conference. Not necessarily the opponents that were on the scheduled 2020 slate before the pandemic. And everyone is scheduled to play a maximum of 8 games with the exception of the Air Force situation with Army and Navy, potentially could be 9.
And then how will you guys determine who will be the representatives for the conference championship game?
We're going to do it right now. We're still structured on the divisional play, but that's going to be determined and discussed in the coming weeks with the athletic directors. We might just go to the top 2 winning percentages, but right now it's still West versus Mountain divisional play.
We're going to try BJ Rains from the Idaho Press Tribune one more time and see if his computer's working.
You got me now, Craig?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a similar question before, but if Boise State and BYU do play, obviously there'd be one less conference game. So how many conference games are the teams expected to play, I guess? And is there a minimum number of conference games a team would have to play to be eligible to be in the championship game?
There's not. And certainly that is correct. That's accurate. If Boise State plays BYU, they would play 7 Mountain West games in addition. And
so I guess in terms of the schedule, then how are you guys putting that together in terms of some teams playing 8 league games, some teams playing 7 or 6 or whatever? It just seems like it's going to be a unique year from that standpoint in terms of trying to put all this together. And when do you hope to have a schedule you can announce?
Well, I think that's the operative word. Everything is unique this year, and so we're adjusting on the fly. That could very well be the case that Air Force and Boise State play 7 games and the others conference, and the others play 8 Mountain West games. We're working frantically and quickly and expeditiously. We have several models. The ADs meet twice a week, and we'll continue to discuss. I would hope probably in the, I don't want to pin ourselves in, but in the very near future, we will have a schedule.
Next question will be from Bruce Feldman from Fox Sports.
Hey, Craig, how concerned are you about you guys are going to play your first game scheduled less than a month away, and the Pac-12 is in the same, pretty much the same geographic footprint, and they had determined that they felt like they couldn't safely do it without additional injury risk till the first week of November. Is that much of a concern, or how much discussion did you guys have about that?
We had a ton of discussion, Bruce. You know, our football coaches have been meeting not quite on a weekly basis, but very frequently. And we've been discussing all summer and into the fall, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, et cetera. And as you can imagine, varying opinions on the necessary time to play. I want to emphasize that the 29 days between September 25th and October 24th is the same window that would be a normal fall. What we didn't have is what you did in June and July before you got to those 29 days. And that's been varying. But as I said before, most of our institutions, maybe with the exception of one, have been in the 12-hour window now for a decent period of time. So between the coach's input, between the athletic director's input, and maybe most importantly, our medical advisory group, we feel comfortable that 29 days is sufficient to prepare.
Thanks, Craig.
Our next question will come from Julian Delgadio from Fox 5 San Diego.
Hey, this is to Craig and Dr. Eastlis, but what happens if there is an outbreak with these just total of 8 games instead of having that 10-game window?
Well, I'll take a stab. You know, certainly we will come up with some type of parameters as to when a game would be canceled. And I can't say postponed because we are in an 8-game, 8-week window. There is no place to reschedule it. And so, you know, whatever our league determines as the parameters and the minimums to play the game, we will abide by those. And certainly we will lean heavily on the advice of the medical advisory group to help us put those parameters and bumpers in, if you would.
And then just a follow-up. So San Diego State had a recent COVID outbreak on campus with more than 900 people reporting that outbreak. Was there any cause for concern or any conversation just about that, despite the fact that, you know, the football team has been in quarantine and isolating?
Yeah, and that gets back, I think, to the local, county, and state restrictions, regulations. And we have noticed a downward trend in most of our markets. I think Utah had a little spike last week. Wyoming has been holding fairly steady. And, you know, certainly the situation on campus is of great concern. And, you know, maybe that's where Dr. Papazian would want to jump in. We discussed that with the board. You know, we are going to be, our determination will be made by what's happening in our local communities and what's happening on our campuses. We're hoping that we can play 8 games starting October 24th, but there is absolutely no guarantee.
I would only just say that we're always concerned about outbreaks on campus. In terms of play, this is where the bubble is so critical. And this determination will be made by the local authorities in San Diego. And of course, President De La Torre will be, you know, the lead on that. We're optimistic that the outbreak will be under control by that time. And we have confidence that certainly in terms of the football program, that they've been successful in maintaining the bubble and the quarantine.
We'll take our next question from Jeff Grammer from the Albuquerque Journal.
Hey guys, I do have 2 questions. And Dr. Papazian, since you're there, let me reverse these and ask you this one first. There is an obligation for you for an entire campus, not just the football team. I'm curious if the Mountain West as a whole or you as a university president have any thoughts on the transparency topic. Should teams be disclosing their number of positives? I know that's come up with some other schools and some other programs that are already playing. Should there be a weekly release of positive tests? And what obligation do you have to tell your campus community how many football bubble members test positive each week?
Well, let me just say each campus leader and each campus will determine how they want to report cases or exposures or those kinds of things. We have activities going on campus right now. We may be primarily virtual, but we do have labs happening on the research side, on the teaching side. We've got the band practicing. We have dance going on, and so we're constantly informing our campus on where things stand. Not always the specific numbers, but certainly the process and whether there's any areas where we need to be concerned. And the football program is one program out of all of our programs on campus, and it would fit in the same approach that we take for communicating with the campus more broadly.
And so, to be clear, anybody there, there won't be a requirement to release individual team testing numbers, like on a weekly injury report or something.
We have not determined that, Jeff. I don't think there will be, but we could discuss that, and it could come differently. But right now, no.
We are nearing the end of this Zoom call. We'll take a couple more questions, and we'll start with Kyle Bonagura from ESPN.
Yeah, this question is for Dr. Papazian. As of yesterday, San Jose State still hadn't submitted its return to play plan to this County of Santa Clara, which is a requirement from them to even start practicing again. And we also face the cohort limit from the state. So, we talked about the window to prepare. San Jose State actually can't meet that window. So I'm wondering what's the most realistic timeline to get both of those approvals before you can start the acclimation period to get ready for the early October 24th start date.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's actually, those conversations are happening as we speak. And we've actually been working closely with Stanford University, which is also in Santa Clara County, with our public health officials. We have confidence that we'll find a solution pretty quickly in order to address the concerns. We've been very fortunate on campus that we haven't had outbreaks like we've seen at other institutions, and so the county is working with us, and we're optimistic that we'll be able to put a plan together that will meet with the appropriate approvals with all the guidelines in a quick enough time where we can be comfortable that our student athletes will be prepared for the start of the season.
So do you think you'll be able to practice by next week then?
We're working very hard to be able to do that, yes. I don't make all of those decisions, so I can't say yes or no, but certainly those conversations are happening. We have a really good plan, and and the county has been very open to having the conversations with us.
Our next question comes from Jay Tust from KTVB in Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, this one's for Craig. And Craig, just curious, how interesting have the last 6 weeks been since you had to postpone football season? And then what was the moment that you really did see opportunity that this might be able to work and that you might be able to bring football back much earlier than you originally anticipated?
I really think it goes back to the rapid antigen testing, and with Quest's support and partnership, it really started to turn probably in the last couple of days for us. And and I think some of my peers have said that was really the game changer. That is gospel. That is what's been the difference maker for us.
And then you mentioned that the Mountain West is going to cover 100% of the costs of testing. Do you expect some schools to maybe test more than 3 times a week? And then how does the Mountain West fund that? Do you guys have a reserve, or does that come from television revenue or somewhere else?
There could be more tests than the 3 that the league will provide. And yes, it's coming out of a reserve fund.
We're going to have time for one more question. You can follow up with myself or Stuart Buchanan in the office after this call, but due to time constraints and everybody else's schedule, we're going to take one last question from Van Tate at KRQE in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah, this is for Craig. And Craig, since it's the last question, I'll make it a 2-part question. How about that? Is that okay? Okay, first of all, I know you said you talked to some of the local officials and state government here in New Mexico because of how strict the mandatory state guidelines are here. How is that going? And do you feel encouraged by your talks with them? And the second part of that, has there been any consideration with states, with teams that are in states that are having those kind of issues, to have a neutral playing site designated somewhere where they could go and play there? Because it looks like New Mexico is going to play all their games on the road at this point.
We have not discussed the neutral site except kind of peripherally, and there are some options available perhaps. And in terms of working with Dr. Stokes and Eddie Nunez, we stay in constant contact. Again, the emphasis here are all these decisions are made on a local or state basis. And we will see who is available and ready to play on October 24th. It was a collective Mountain West decision, but individual institutions may have to adjust.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
We'd like to thank everybody for joining us on today's virtual press conference. We apologize we could not get to all of the questions on today's call. I also want to thank everybody for joining us on this virtual press conference today. We apologize for not being able to get to all of the questions, but we had numerous folks on this call and we're unable to get to everyone. Please feel free to reach out to Stuart Buchanan or myself with further questions. I would like to thank San Jose State President, Dr. Mary Papazian, Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson, Wyoming Athletic Director Tom Berman, Dr. Tony Islas from the University of Nevada, and Mr. Jim Davis from Quest Laboratories for joining us today. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you on October 24th.
Thank you.